Welcome on in, guys. Tobin here with you. Thanks for checking out the channel. Hope everybody's doing fantastic out there. After the holiday weekend, Miami Dolphins back on the practice field today. Hey, Tua was out there. It's like we got to do standing counts every time he goes out. Oh, Tua was there. Tua wasn't there. Oh, this could be in a contract, impasse. What are we doing? I would like Tua just to be like real reckless. He just starts throwing passes at Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel, like a human jugs machine. No, but Tua was back at practice today. A media session was held by Mike McDaniel, and some interesting stuff coming out there, especially about Tua's development. Some good questions about, what does year 3 Tua look like in this offense? What are the steps? What's the next evolution of this offense is definitely, an interesting question. And I think those are things that, the additions of like a Jonnu Smith and Odell Beckham Jr., more experience with the running backs. How does this all configure and come together for this Miami Dolphins team? But obviously Tua is the guy that makes it go. This was interesting, though. Mike McDaniel was asked about the whole Tua. Has he noticed anything with the new quarterback coach since he's arrived? And he actually did give a little bit of a revelation that Tua, in his eyes, is throwing with more force. Here was Mike McDaniel talking to the media earlier today.
Deliberate intentionality with anything you do renders like some unexpected consequences that are.
Just want to be clear. I don't know what the hell that means. I don't know what that means. He uses big words. He's a very smart man.
Deliberate intentionality with anything you do renders like some unexpected consequences that are definitely desirable. I think he, without thinking, is probably generating a little more force on some throws that he's trying to drive. I have actually extensive experience with the coach that he's working with, John Beck.
Before we get to story time with Mike McDaniel, because anybody who has to reminisce about the times of John Beck, those are not good times. Those are not good times. I don't reminisce about the good times of John Beck. I know nobody reminisces about the good times of John Beck. Remember back when I was doing doing field reporting for, at that time, $7.90 The Ticket, which was basically, would go into the locker room. You get back in the day. It was so simple. You didn't have to get video. You just got sound. Oh, do I love a good audio recorder. You go in there, stick your microphone there. If you had a malt box, plug right into the malt box. Simpler times. Simpler times without Twitter and all the social media and the additional stuff that I've poured on my plate for no reason whatsoever. But you just get sound. And I remember thinking to myself, looking at John Beck, just like you'd see these crazy specimens, right? Like you'd look at these people, you'd be like, oh my God, Cam Wake, Jake Long, what a moose. You'd be like, this is crazy. And I'd look at John Beck and I'm like, who is he, a golfer? Like, who is this guy? That's the future of the Dolphins right there, John Beck. It's not nice, but that's just like these are the thoughts that just came across my head. Not that I'm an honest or I should be body shaming anybody, but it just was my thought as a young kid in this football locker room, thinking to myself, man, look at Joey Porter, Channing Crowder. I tell you who had himself, who was put together, Jeremiah Bell, dude. But I'd like look at John. I'd like, John Beck, how is he supposed to do that? And for some reason, I never felt that way with Tua. Like Tua, you're always like, oh, that guy's not. He's not the biggest dude in the world, but I'm not taken back by how small he is. A lot of the times, in this, you see a lot of the best athletes here in this business, so to say. Sometimes you're almost taken aback by the guys who are physically unimpressive as you are by the guys who are physically impressive, because you see a lot of guys who are physically impressive. And so when you see somebody who's like, whoa, how the hell is this guy going to make it in this league? That's my long way of saying it. Like, I was like not faithful that John Beck was going to make it. Anyway, that's my John Beck story time. Here is, we'll get to Mike McDaniels here in a second. But in reality, a lot of people seem to, doesn't mean he can't coach. Just because he sucked as a player and was 0-7 starting in his career, and the Dolphin just thinks of him as a just royal bust with the franchise, it doesn't mean that he can't be a good coach. He absolutely can. I mean, like you look at somebody like Chris Quinn, who was like ridiculed by Shaq. who is kind of a journeyman program. Everybody on the Miami Heat staff says like Chris Quinn will be a head coach, is going to be a head coach, is as good as they come. And yeah, you probably won't get fast-tracked as much as a guy like Jason Kidd does or Steve Nash does, and Chauncey Billups. These are guys who are going to the Hall of Fame. You don't need to be the best player to be a great coach. And so people who have looked at this John Beck marriage, I understand why the Dolphin fan is apprehensive about it. It's not like I when you hear, it would be like, it would be like the Heat fan hears that like Hassan Whiteside was teaching post moves to, let's just say, Zach Edey if he was drafted by the Heat. Like you'd be like, really? Oh, okay. Like that's, it's you're getting dribbling lessons. Like Tyler Hero's working this offseason with Shabazz Napier. You're like, oh, all right. Well, that's something. So I get it. If you're a Heat fan, if you're a Dolphins fan, and you heard the name John Beck and you got the willies, I get it. I'm understanding of people being skeptical of that. That being said, he can be a head coach and he can be an effective coach. And it seems like, according to Mike McDaniel, who I could see being like a little jelly belly. It's like, he's going to work with another coach. Let's see if this works out. But what Mike McDaniel's about to reveal here is that like John Beck and him, he's familiarity with him, and he believes John Beck has familiarity with this team. And so it's gonna work with some great cohesion with Tua, who, yes, is going off to do his own thing to get better and get more effective. And as Mike McDaniel says, giving him more force, but also he seems to know what this offense will need.
I have actually extensive experience with the coach that he's working with, John Beck. I was a coach in 2011 for the Washington team that he quarterbacked, and have been on a couple teams where he's worked with some of the quarterbacks we've had already. So there's some familiarity with that, which is awesome because with John, he knows what we're trying to do and the direction with or how we ask the quarterback to play. So
subtle move, also calling him Johnny. It's like that's the familiarity that they're at. So it's like, he's even more familiar. Calls him Johnny.
I think just that connectivity to your game and finding or trying to unearth every single inch and iota of professional development, that in itself, you're headed in the right directions.
Yeah, I think that's the thing is like Tua's not sitting here resting on his laurels. Everybody kind of made fun of I love the idea last year. You guys know I like fighting, so I love the jiu-jitsu thing last year that Tua did. But yeah, most people were like making fun of it. You need to learn how to fall. But just remember, like last year, all of it was just how does Tua stay safe? How does Tua just get through a season of playing football, which he did pretty successfully. Not as good as everybody would want. Not a perfect quarterback. But one thing that is that you would want him out of the field way more than the backups that are there. And so all of this attention last year was just driven to, can the guy stay healthy? Can the guy keep himself protected? Can the guy stay on the field, right? And now, awesome that he's in this professional place in his career where he can just get it better at quarterback. He could just improve upon his skills, didn't have to focus on how do I not land weird? Do I have to make my body bigger? How much of my body do I have to make bigger? Is this going to ruin my mobility? Which is the next part we're going to get to, is the interesting part of Mike McDaniel's press conference. But it is cool that Tua can just contract aside, all of that stuff aside, right? Like if any Dolphin fan didn't have to worry about this contract, this thing hanging over the Dolphins right now, just the Tua the player, I think most of us are very excited / curious to see what does this next year mean for his development. I feel like any objective person could feel that way. It's just a matter of some people are scared of paying him. I don't dismiss the reasons why you are, but I don't want to get into the same debate 100 times. But if you just talk about the player, yeah, I think everyone wants to see, well, what can this guy do? What are the leaps that he can get better at? Because he's not perfect. He's not perfect. He does have some things that he has to get better on. So he went into this year and lost weight, but wanted to keep strength. And so Mike McDaniel kind of shot down the notion that Tua was asked to get big last year. Now is getting down later, like he's yo-yoing his weight like he's Ricky Hatton outside of a fight camp. And Coach McDaniel explained why that's not necessarily the case.
That's a very understandable misconception. It was not. We were not on a off-season weight program last year. It was strength, and so him getting stronger, and then the unintended consequences for him personally and how he saw his game. His strength increased, but he didn't really. He felt like he could have the same amount of strength and kind of reshape his body and be a little lighter on his feet.
Crafting a perfect mechanics around things. Let's sculpt, take the base of this, chisel it away, make a more effective Tua.
So it's kind of the natural evolution of you get stronger, and then you really pay attention to your diet and the times that you're eating and when your caloric intake is, those types of things, so he can maintain that those strength gains while also being a little more limber within the pocket. I think is what's drove him to kind of attack that, which he's done a great job of.
Which is going to be an interesting thing. Like, that is definitely a development everybody noticed last year. A bit too statuesque. We saw some of the plays that he had as a younger player when he was smaller, trying to extend plays. But it is a fine balance, right? Like, part of the balance of this is going to be while you want to be more nimble and be more limber in the pocket, there is also that balance of, but you also still want him to protect himself. Like, ultimately, these extending plays is important, yes, and that's but he's never going to be Lamar or Josh Allen, or even probably Patrick Mahomes. He's not. That's not his game. But do you want it to never be a threat? Do you want it to never be an option? No. And do you not? But I think we're all got the same reaction when we watched Tua go out and run last year. It was all like, just be okay. We all understand why that is, because of the injuries that he had. But hopefully, with a year under his belt healthy and doing whatever that he's doing for his body, it's not an issue anymore. And he can just maybe at this point play at the weight that he's the most comfortable at and play the freest, because that's usually when you're going to get to a best player. So some interesting stuff from McCochin today on his QB1.